What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. It's Thursday, time to take a look at every single game, go over the players I'd be starting and sitting this week. Gonna be a long one. Sit back, hit the like button. Let's get things started off with the Thursday night game, Texans at Jets. 42-point total. Jets are 2-point home favorites. For the Texans, the spread is like that because Nico is out. Diggs tore his ACL, so you're not getting as dominant of a Texans offense as you're used to. But it means we're also going to get a very, very condensed offense. Everything's going to be centered around Joe Mixon, Tank Dell, and Dalton Schultz, with sprinkles going to the other wide receivers, to Cade Stover, but most of the volume is going to Mixon, Dell, and Schultz. I am a John Mechie fan. I think he's underrated. I think he should definitely be used more, especially now with Diggs done for the year. But at the end of the day, breaking down the Texans is very simple this week. Start Dell, start Mixon, maybe stream Schultz if you need to, but I think most of the volume goes to those players. I don't think I deviate into Hutchinson, into Mechie. I think they're still too thin of plays, especially against the Jets. For the Jets, they annoyingly went back to more of a rotation with Hall and Braylon Allen. That's going to limit the ceiling more for Hall because he's going to have to be super efficient if he's not getting, 80, 85% of touches like he was for a little bit of time there. Garrett Wilson also out-targeted and outproduced Adams since Adams joined the team. So and that's not due to lack of routes. So for some of these guys that have been changing teams through these trades, their first game with the team, they're running like 20, 25% of routes. Maybe they're just not having full snap share. Adams stepped right in. He's at like 95%. I think he's 96 and 94% in 2 games. That is not the reason that Garrett Wilson is outproducing him. So both are going to grade out decently in this spot just because we know that's where the volume is going. They're not throwing the ball to these secondary wide receivers. And so the vast majority of the targets are going to Garrett Wilson, are going to Adams. We should project around 8 or 9 targets for each of them with the upside to spike from there. And whenever they get into the red zone, recently it hasn't necessarily gone to these guys, but most of the time when they get in there, he's looking at Adams. He's looking to Garrett Wilson. So I would start all of them. Start Hall, start Adams, start Wilson. At this point, I think you can say it every single week. Again, every week they're not all going to go off, but I think enough volume is there. Again, unfortunate that they're using Braylon Allen more, but I think you have to start those guys. And then I don't think I would stream Rodgers until we get like a really strong matchup. This is a fine matchup, but it's not like a super strong matchup. He's a pretty low-end play. There's actually some pretty decent streaming options this week. I don't think you have to go to Rodgers. I didn't mention Stroud before that. Again, with only having Mixon, Dell, Schultz to really throw to, there are better options. There are a lot of good streaming options this week. I don't think you're playing either of these quarterbacks on Thursday night. Sunday games kick off with Commanders at Giants, 43.5-point total. Commanders, 3.5-point road favorites. For the Commanders, we have another very consolidated offense. Daniels, McLaurin, Brian Robinson Jr., all players, or they're only players with at least 10.5 expected points per game. Expected points per game is just a volume metric. It's just how much volume, how good of volume are you receiving each week? So what is your expectation to score from there? If we're only seeing 3 players at 10.5 or more, we're seeing a very consolidated offense. Ertz slides in just under that number, and no one else has at least 8.5. If you're not averaging, if you're averaging like 6 expected points per game, you're just not seeing enough volume to really be start worthy in fantasy. So Daniels, McLaurin, I would call them must starts every week. Brian Robinson Jr., a low end running back 2 in this spot. Ertz remains a solid streaming option. He spiked for 11 targets last week. That's, out of the ordinary. He's not going to be up at double-digit targets every week, but he should be around 4 to 8 targets. He should land in that range most weeks. He should finish around 3 to 5 receptions, around 30 to 50 yards. If that's what you want, hopefully he falls into the end zone as well. It's a stat line that you're probably not going to be disappointed with at tight end. You're probably not going to be as excited as you were last week, but he's a fine option to stream. Then for the Giants, I will say I'm surprised a little bit by the line. I thought that they would be more than 3.5-point underdogs, but they are home. That gives you around 2 to 3 points depending on the team. So still close-ish to a touchdown difference there, but I still thought that the Commanders would be bigger favorites even on the road. I also doubt Tyron Tracy Jr. is going to play this week. Check the status reports later in the day when this goes out on Thursday. Really, Friday is what we want to know, but he suffered the concussion on Monday night last week, not thinking he's going to play this week. So my guess is that Devin Singletary is going to step in, not be a featured running back, but step into a really strong workload, one that, if you've been stashing him, maybe you have him as a handcuff to Tyron Tracy Jr., maybe you've just kind of had him on your bench, just kind of chilling there. Maybe you added him off of free agency. Going to slide in as like a low-end running back 2. Right now he's running back 26. This week, there's a pretty clear top like 27 to 30 running backs, and then there's a pretty big drop-off after that. So if someone ranks outside the top 30 running backs this week, they're really not that great of a play. If they rank in that general like 25 to 30 range, viable, but a low-end play, and basically everyone above that is just going to grade out as a solid play to be using this week. Again, Singletary at the end of that range of like solid plays, but if we don't have Tyron Tracy Jr., he's going to be a quality play at running back 2. And if Tyron Tracy Jr. is able to play, you don't play Singletary, and you definitely play Tyron Tracy Jr. He looks fantastic. Behind him, it's really only Neighbors as a must start. You can't trust Daniel Jones. None of the tight ends are seeing that much usage. And then Wan'Dale Robinson, his ADOT is like 1 yard. Like even if he racks up 7 receptions, goes for like 50 yards. Like you just can't really trust him when Neighbors is back. And same thing with Slayton in terms of can't trust him. He gets the ball deeper downfield, but the volume isn't there while Neighbors is healthy unless you're in a pretty deep league. Next up, we have Chargers at Browns, 42.5 point total. Chargers are 1.5 point road favorites. For the Chargers, Ladd had his breakout game last week. We've talked about this for a while. Second half of the season for rookie wide receivers, that's when we start to see these breakouts. And we talked about Ladd in a number of weeks being like, he is playing well. Like he is a quality NFL wide receiver. He's going to have a really good career if he can stay healthy. It is also noteworthy that the Chargers have been very pass heavy post-bye. They opened the season with a negative pass rate over expectation in every single game. And that's what we thought entering the season. This was going to be a run-first offense. They're going to utilize these running backs, utilize this offensive line, and that's going to be the core of their team. I think they're starting to realize that Gus is hurt, that they don't trust their backup running backs, and Dobbins is not playing very well. Like after his first 2 games, he has not played well at all. So post-bye, they have switched things up. They have gone pass rate over expectations been positive every game, one of the highest in the league. They are letting Justin Herbert rip it. So I don't think Ladd is a must start, but he's a very strong play. And if you have him, I'd probably find a way to put him into the flex spot. If they're going to be this pass heavy, and he's going to be their number 1 wide receiver, and he's got Herbert as his quarterback, and he's a good player, it's like there's a lot of positive factors to where I'd want to be playing Ladd right now. Herbert, I don't think is still really on our streaming radar. Again, it's a good week. There's only 2 teams on bye. So if he was the top projected player and you wanted to go with him, honestly, I would be okay using him this week. I don't think he would be your top projected player. Beyond that, I think you still have to roll with Dobbins as running back 2, even them being more pass heavy. He's still getting a really strong workload. He's just been really bad since week 3, but he's got that goal line job on lock. And so if he's going to get 17 and 20 touches, you don't really care that much what the efficiency is. That's a lot of touches. That's a lot of opportunities to score, break off a long play. You probably want to be playing him. And then for Disley, only stream him if Hurst is out. Like, don't stream him if he's playing. Then for the Browns, Chubb's box score results have not been good. They've been pretty bad. But you got to remember, these are his first 2 games back from a major knee injury. Last week was against a bottom 3, or it was a bottom 3 matchup, so we can say top 3 matchup for rushing. If you look at running backs against the Ravens, Nick Chubb is actually the only running back on the season that's ran for more than 50 yards against them. He's the only one that had a positive rushing yards over expectation per carry. So I understand that he has not been good in these 2 games, but that was a brutal matchup last week, and he actually wasn't that bad. The Chargers are also a super poor matchup, unfortunately, so it's like you'd like it if Chubb could get a good matchup. Looking at his upcoming schedule, we talked about this with like Winston, with some of his pass catchers. They do have a brutal schedule. Like the Browns just have a very, very difficult schedule upcoming. So there's not going to be very many matchups where we're really liking this, but they are surprisingly just feeding the ball to Nick Chubb. And I do think, honestly, this point on, I think you can trust him as running back 2. If he's getting this many touches, if he's done that well against that tough of a team, he's like semi-back. I think he can have a vintage Nick Chubb game at some point. But I'd play him as a running back 2. After Chubb, again, we talked about this. Winston elevates this offense, elevates every single pass catcher. The matchup is not nearly as strong as it was last week, but we can still project decent volume for the pass catchers, decent volume for Winston. And Njoku is definitely a must start as a mid-range tight end 1. Tillman, Judy, more flex plays this week. Elijah Moore, flex viable, but I would prefer to be in a full PPR league. We know that Elijah Moore has a much lower ADOT. He's going to rack up receptions, but he's not going to be used deep downfield. He's not going to have a great chance of scoring a touchdown, so much more likely to have like 6 for 60, which is totally fine in a flex spot of a full PPR league, less fine in a half PPR league, not fine in a standard scoring league. But yeah, it's basically like you're going to get more volume from Judy and Tillman, at least better volume deeper downfield. Tillman's their best bet to hit for a long play to score a touchdown, but I still think Judy is talented enough to do okay in this offense. But I would say it's Tillman, then Judy, then Elijah Moore, with Elijah Moore probably honestly having the highest floor on the team. And then Winston, I think he's fine to stream. Ideally, though, in this spot, you have a better matchup. Again, there are a lot of pretty good spots this week for quarterback. Next up, we have Dolphins at Bills, 49.5 point total. Now we have Tua back, and then the Bills are 6-point home favorites. For the Dolphins, Achane and Hill are just weekly must starts. I don't care who's playing, or I don't care who they're playing. If Tua is playing and they are healthy, you start them. Just to confirm the status on Tyreek Hill. He's been playing through a foot injury. I think he should be fine, but obviously confirmed he is playing. The real decision point on Miami is Waddle and Mostert. Mostert has looked pretty bad recently, but they keep giving him goal line touches, and so that's going to help elevate his value. He's outside that clear top 30 running backs in my eyes, and ideally I would bench him. This doesn't grade out as a matchup where it's really good for Mostert. Ideally for Mostert, you want a spot where Miami is projected to score a lot of points, is projected to be winning, and so we can expect more run heavy. We can expect more rushing touchdowns. Not this spot. This spot, they're projected to be trailing, not score as much, and it's more of a passing spot where they're going to use Achane more. So easily, they could just get inside the 10-yard line, could just run in with Mostert. And if you get a touchdown from your running back, you're honestly fine with that. But you're definitely going to need that touchdown. I don't know that I trust Mostert this week. Waddle only has a 16% target share on the season, only has one game of at least 47 receiving yards. He can always hit on a big play. So he is always someone that can be put in the flex spot that you're just crossing your fingers, hoping is 102 touchdowns. But that's all he is a boom bust play, a very low floor. But I probably don't have to tell you that if you have him. For the Bills, Josh Allen, James Cook, must starts. They're playing well enough right now, enough expected fantasy points on their volume that I just think you have to be playing them. Shakir, honestly, I don't want to call him a must start, but a very strong start. He's getting great volume. So I know people can definitely look at the catch rate and be like, okay, that's going to regress. And obviously, when we were looking at it at 100%, yes, he's not going to catch 100% of his targets all season, but don't think that he's going to drop down to 60%. The volume, the specific volume he's receiving, the expectation on his receptions is that he has a 90% catch rate. It's absolutely insane how efficient the looks are that he's getting. So he doesn't need 10 targets in a game to go off, because if he has 10 targets, he's probably catching 9 of them, which is crazy to say. But yeah, Shakir, very strong start. Amari, Keon Coleman, more flex plays. It would be nice if we could kind of see consistency emerge here, but there is no real consistency between these two, because they are kind of reliant on bigger plays, on touchdown, and especially for Coleman, on contested catches. And you could just see a game where he has 7 targets. Well, half the time he might catch 6 of them for 100 and a touchdown because he catches the contested looks. And then the other half, he might only catch, 2 for 40 and no touchdown. And so he's going to be very up and down. But again, I think they're both flex plays. It's a good game environment. So if it's close, I'd probably put them in there. And then Dalton Kincaid, he's definitely hurt by Amari Cooper being there, but 10 and 12. I know that's like a lot of names to maybe be starting on an offense, and Miami doesn't have a trash defense. So odds are 1, 2, even maybe 3 of these guys are going to kind of disappoint. But the Bills are projected to score nearly 28 points. Josh Allen is playing fantastic this season. Highest yards per attempt of his career, lowest interception rate, second highest touchdown rate. So if possible, I just want to put Bills players into my starting lineup right now, especially when they are playing at home, when the matchup is neutral to positive, and especially when you have the explosive players and Tua healthy on the other side, it just elevates the chance for a shootout. Again, when in doubt, put the Bills players in your starting lineup. Next up, we've got Cowboys at Falcons. Highest total game of the week, 52 points. Falcons, 2.5-point home favorites. For the Cowboys, everyone has a plus matchup. The spread is close. The total is massive. My problem is, even in a great spot, like the Falcons have a very bad defense, and it's in a dome. Like everything is going well for this. Who do you trust outside of Dak, Lamb, and Ferguson? Those 3 should probably be in your starting lineup. But outside of that, it's like maybe Dowdle, if he's healthy now, as like a low-end running back 2. But he's outside that range I keep mentioning. Maybe Tolbert as like a desperation play, but you definitely need a long play or a touchdown for him to not post a dud. Again, a good spot. I feel good about Dallas scoring into the 20s here. It's just that I want to play their top 3, and I don't really want to play anyone else. So really Dowdle, Tolbert, fine, but more desperation plays. Then for the Falcons, their favorites. It's the highest total game of the week. This Dallas defense has not been playing up to par. Cousins, great streaming option this week. Bijan, London, Pitts, all must starts. Even Mooney is like a low-end wide receiver 2. I'd find a way to start him. He's up to 13.3 expected points per game in the season. And through week 8, his pace for the season is 76 receptions, 1,062 yards, and 8 touchdowns. That's a really strong season. If it's close in this spot, I would be starting him this week. Only other option is Algier, and that comes down to game script. If Atlanta gets up and they're able to run the ball in the second half, it's an Algier game. He's going to get a lot of carries, good chance of scoring. He'll have a solid game. You'll like him earning back too. If Dallas pulls ahead, and now we have a trailing game script from Atlanta, now it's a Bijan game. And Bijan's going to have a great game, and you're not going to want Algier. So a lot of variance here because the spread is close. We don't know exactly who's going to win this game. If you have a strong take, go with that take. There are definitely worse plays, though. There's probably a 55 to 57% chance that Atlanta is up in the second half of this game, and especially in the fourth quarter. And that means there's around that percent chance that Algier has a pretty decent game. I'm only projecting him for 8.5 half PPR points right now. That is typically less than you would like as a starter. But again, decent chance and at least a path, right? A lot of players will project that low. There's no path, right? Whether they win or lose, you're like, that's kind of the expectation here. If Atlanta does win, he could easily see 12, 13, 14 fantasy points. And so there's at least a path to good production. Next up, we've got the Saints at the Panthers, 43.5 point total. Saints, 7.5 point road favorites. For the Saints, it's a smash spot. Everyone does well against the Panthers. Even with the lowish total for the game, their team total is tied with the Lions this week. They're just projected to score a lot of points. Kamara, Olave, clear must starts. I think you can stream Taysom Hill. You could stream Jawan Johnson. Jawan, I would say, has a fairly low ceiling. Like if you are streaming him, you got to understand you're probably only getting a couple looks. You're just kind of hoping that he happens to be the one that scores the touchdown. I would say that he is still a very low-end streaming option this week. But if the Saints can get up, if they can score a lot of touchdowns, maybe he falls into the end zone. But I would say Hill. Them having the injury to Kendre Miller, this being such a good rushing spot, Taysom Hill could very easily get a couple chances to score a rushing touchdown. You are going to need a rushing touchdown from Taysom Hill for him to not be a bust, but a better option than most weeks this week for Taysom Hill. I just really hate using him in full PPR. Like in a full PPR league, he's going to have like at most one reception. And so you desperately need that touchdown. Even then, he's not that great a play. So better in half PPR and much better in standard. I'm also expecting Derek Carr back this week. I think my take on everyone is the same if Carr does not play, just like downgrade a little bit, but I'm expecting Carr back this week. I think they're going to look good against the Panthers. I don't think I'd stream him because, again, we have a lot of decent options, but he's not awful. He's coming in as quarterback 18 right now. Then for the Panthers, Bryce Young should get another start. Obviously, if Dalton returned, everyone would look better, but it looks like Bryce Young is going to be playing. The matchup is pretty solid all around, but with Bryce under center, with Deontay gone, it's not looking great for offensive production for the Panthers. The Saints' run defense has been pretty trash, so Chuba is in a really good spot, assuming that Brooks remains out this week. Behind him, you've got Leggett. He's my wide receiver 38 right now. You've got Jalen Coker as my wide receiver 46. So sort of comes down to what you have if you actually need to play them. Just know that their floors are very low. Like, don't be shocked if the Panthers score 9 points this week. I mean, the 3 games that Bryce Young has started, they have 10, 3, and 14 points. So they're not going to score a lot of points this week. They're probably not going to look that good. Really, it's only Chuba is the only one I feel decent about. And even him, he sees a big dip in production with Bryce Young starting. Next up, we've got the Patriots at the Titans. 38-point total, very gross game, back-to-back kind of gross games here. And then the Titans, 3.5-point home favorites. The Patriots, I would assume that May is out this week with concussion. If he starts, it kind of just elevates everyone, maybe like 20%. But I would assume we get another Jacoby Brissett start. Despite what you saw from the Lions last week, just absolutely decimating this Titans defense, the Titans do have an above-average defense, so it is a negative spot for New England, especially being on the road. Stevenson is really their only skill player that we're projecting for more than like 8 fantasy points. Even he is just a low-end running back too, but personally, he's getting a lot of touches, so if you want to play him as a volume-based running back too, go for it. Other than that, maybe you stream Hunter Henry, but I really only want to be playing these guys if May is quarterback. If Brissett is quarterback, I just don't want to play a Patriots player. Then for the Titans, Ridley broke out last week, but it's back to another negative matchup against New England. I think every single matchup after this week is positive again for Ridley. He has over a 23% target share on the season, is by far the best player in the receiving game. He's going to be matched up with Christian Gonzalez. He could easily be shut down by him. But I think volume-wise, he's getting enough looks where ideally not wide receiver 2, but I would say in the flex spot, he's a pretty good play. Again, he's just going to get a lot of looks this week. Only other player you're looking at is Pollard. Depends on Spears, though. If Spears remains out, Pollard is a great play as like a low-end running back 2, high-end, or low-end running back 1, high-end running back 2. If Spears returns, you're not playing Spears. Pollard would be more of just the running back 2. I think you're still playing him. I think he definitely grades out inside that top like 27 to 30, but would obviously be a much worse play if Spears is active. Running backs do have the best matchup against New England, though, and if Tennessee can get ahead, which is what the spread is projecting here, then it could be a good spot for Pollard. Next up, we've got Raiders at Bengals, 46.5-point total. Bengals, 7-point home favorites. For the Raiders, the running backs have a neutral matchup. Everyone else has a positive matchup. They're not a good offense, though, but they're projected to score nearly 20 points. That's not terrible. They do have a fairly consolidated offense, so we do know where the ball is going on this team. Brock Bowers is a must start. Jacoby Myers is, I don't want to call him must start, but he's my wide receiver 18 right now. Maybe that's not must start, but like, I think he should be in your starting lineup. He's been banged up all year, but he's finally healthy. Adams is gone. He's set up for a really strong finish to the end of the year. Behind those two, I hate Madison, but his touch counts over the last 4 weeks are 17, 19, 26, and 19. Anyone getting that many touches is totally fine to start running back 2. He has at least 2 receptions in every single of those last 4 weeks. So he's also being involved in the receiving game. He's super inefficient. I think it's like 2.7 yards per carry over that time, but not an easy matchup against the Bengals, and they could be trailing, which could force them away from carries. But 5 different running backs in 8 games have rushed for at least 90 yards against the Bengals. So it is a spot where he could do well. The Bengals have allowed the 3rd most rushing touchdowns on the season. So volume-based play for Madison this week. For the Bengals, the Raiders are a great matchup for running backs, a relatively poor one for all other positions. Chase, Burrow must starts every week. If Higgins plays, he is too. This offense has honestly really struggled without him this season, and he's a significantly higher target share than Jamar Chase when both of them are playing. Kind of surprising to see, and it's surprising to see how bad they've played without Higgins, but he really has been what's been holding this offense together. So again, If Higgins is out there, I think we got to just trust that he's healthy, because I don't think they're going to throw him out there if he's not healthy, and I play him. Mike Gesicki comes down to Higgins. Mike Gesicki has 7 receptions in 2 of the 3 games that Higgins has missed, and they made it a point to get him the football last week, but he's averaged 14 receiving yards in the 5 other games. So if Higgins plays, bench the tight ends. If Higgins is out, Mike Gesicki could actually be streamed this week. At running back, Chase Brown is definitely taken over as the clear lead back. He can be started as like a low-end running back too this week, while Moss is really just a low-end play, ideally only a desperation play in deeper leagues. Moss has 7, 9, and 9 touches over the last 3 weeks, and he has somehow only managed 1.7 yards per carry over that time. They have finally figured out that Chase Brown is clearly the better running back between the two. Final 1 o'clock game is going to be Broncos at Ravens, 46.5-point total. Ravens 9-point home favorites. For the Broncos, Bo Nix has been playing great. It's another smash spot against the Ravens. Baltimore has forced the 2nd highest opponent pass play rate. They've allowed over 21 more passing yards per game than the next worst team. That is a lot, averaging nearly, I think it's 291 passing yards per game off the top of my head that they've allowed. That's crazy. Nick's currently grading out as my quarterback 16. I have a feeling towards the end of the week he'll be closer to that quarterback like 12 or 14 range, but he's a pretty solid option. Unfortunately, it's kind of tough to trust the people behind him. The Ravens have a shutdown defense, and so I really don't, or a shutdown run defense, so I don't really want to touch any of the Denver running backs. Sutton's a top wide receiver, but his target share has been very up and down this season. I think I would play Sutton in the flex, and I would stream Bo Nix this week. If you were super desperate in a deeper format, kind of like with the Browns last week, there's upside in this spot for these pass catchers. So if you had to play Troy Franklin, if you had to play Devon Veal, you could go for it. Again, 8, 10, 12 team league. I don't think you need to do that, but 14, 16 team league. If you had to play them, I think this is one of the better spots they will have. But it's really more just Sutton and Bo Nix for me this week for Denver. The Ravens, Denver has a really strong defense, but their offense has been incredible. Like the Ravens can do it against anyone. Now they add Deontay Johnson into the mix, and so they're going to score so many points every single week. It's going to be very consistent offense. I don't think Deontay is going to have a full snap share this week, so I'd probably bench him if you can, just because there's a risk he goes out there and plays like 30% of snaps and doesn't really produce anything. I would just want to see this offense really before playing him, but if you have no other options, sure, I guess go with him. But hopefully we just get a report and I'll adjust the rankings accordingly. But Lamar, Henry, they need to be in starting lineups every week. Flowers is a tough call. He's projecting as a strong wide receiver too, and it really just comes down to how much Deontay plays. So again, I'll adjust the rankings. Pat Surtain's also back. That presents a pretty tough matchup for Flowers. If you have really strong options and Flowers has always been on the fringes for you each week, maybe bench him. If you've been really relying on Flowers and you kind of have to play him every week, I think he's still in a good enough spot. It's fine. The volume should be there to where I think I would leave him in there and play him this week. Because again, I don't think Deontay is going to have a full snap share. At tight end, don't look now, but since week 5, Mark Andrews is a tight end 5 overall and in points per game. He has 7.5, 14.1, 18.1, and 12.1 fantasy points. I really think they just lied to us early in the season that he was injured from that car accident. I don't see another explanation to where he can go from like multiple 0 reception games in a row, getting like 1 target each week, to all of a sudden being used consistently. Again, it'll be interesting to see how the target shares shift with Deontay now in town. But the one positive for Andrews is that like he's not a high volume play, he's a touchdown guy. So he's going to get 4 to 5 looks every week, but his value really comes from being featured in the red zone. If Deontay happens to take one of those targets every week, it's not the end of the world because, again, most of his volume does come in the red zone. So right now, Andrews, 10 and 14. I think if you've been rolling with him, why stop? Just continue with that. Then Bateman, likely boom bust plays that are much more likely to bust than boom. 4 o'clock games kick off with Bears at Cardinals, 44.5-point total. Cardinals, 1.5-point home favorites. For the Bears, Caleb had an awful game last week, but such is life with the rookie quarterback, right? Like, we have to understand these guys are rookies, that we can't expect them all to be like Jaden Daniels. The mobility has been helping recently, though. He's got 34, 56, and 47 rushing yards over the last 3 weeks. So even when he does have a game like last week where he's a complete 0 through the air, he actually does get you some fantasy points. I don't feel amazing about him this week. He's my quarterback 11. You guys know I have that decision between I have Caleb Williams and Patrick Mahomes. I'm starting Mahomes this week, so that can give you some sort of idea. I do think Caleb is still in the streaming mix. Again, quarterback 11 is a really strong grade. I think he might fall a little bit from there, but he's still a totally fine option this week. As for the skill players, I don't see how you bench Swift right now, so keep playing him. Wide receivers, don't have a great matchup, and the volume has been kind of tough for them. Moore right now is a wide receiver 22, Adunze wide receiver 38, Keenan Allen wide receiver 43. No one stands out as a must play. I don't think any of them can be considered strong plays as well. Even more, he's got 47 total receiving yards over the last 2 games combined. So all are really just flex plays in my eyes. You're really hoping they score a touchdown or hit on a long play. I think you're probably sticking with Moore. I think you're still playing DJ Moore, but it's like he should be viewed as their most valuable. It's just, the volume has not been great for any individual player in the receiving game. And then Cole Kmet, I mean, you guys know, right? If you have Cole Kmet, he can go off. He could do nothing. He's a very, very volatile player right now, 10 and 14. Find a stream. If you need that ceiling, he's got it, but don't be surprised if he scored 1 point. Then for the Cardinals, running backs with a very positive matchup. Everyone else is slightly negative. McBride is really the only must start, but I would say like James Conner's a really good play at running back too. You're probably playing him. Kyler Murray, quarterback 12 right now, but if you've been using him, I wouldn't go out and stream someone else. I'd stick with him. Marvin Harrison Jr., I think he should just be left in that like wide receiver 2 flex spot every week regardless of matchup. So many people commented last week about how Marv is a bust. It is ridiculous that you think you could play him. It's a pretty wild sentiment when we have such a locked-in prospect, but it goes to show you that like people will give up on prospects super quickly. So we need to keep that in mind in the trade markets. Marvin Harrison Jr. is one of the best wide receiver prospects we've seen in a while. And yet even after 3 strong games in a row, having a couple nukes mixed in there in the first couple of games of his career, all it takes is 2 down games and concussion for a ton of people to just completely jump ship. That is insane to me. So again, poor matchup, but he's a great player. I think he should probably just be in your starting lineup no matter what. Next up, we have Jaguars at Eagles, 45.5 point total. Eagles are 7.5 point home favorites. For the Jaguars, Christian Kirk's done for the year, and then we've got a ton of questionable dudes. Brian Thomas Jr., day-to-day, ETN questionable, Gabe Davis banged up, not many reports about his injury. So we will see who's able to play this week. My guess right now is that everyone, but of course Christian Kirk and done for the year, is that all these guys are going to play, but until we get to Friday, we don't know. So I'll just have to adjust the rankings accordingly. Like we can't go through every single possible combination in this video, but I will say this. If Brian Thomas Jr. plays, play him. Easy as that. I mean, he's a must start every single week, regardless of matchup. If he's out, and especially if you get Gabe out as well, then maybe Parker Washington in the flex spot. Evan Ingram would be an unreal play as well. If you only get Brian Thomas Jr. out, you could look to Washington. You could look to Gabe in the flex spot. I don't think I'm jumping for joy for either one of them, but it's a good spot. If ETN misses, definitely put Tank in the starting lineup. If ETN plays, ETN and Tank are both kind of low-end plays. I wouldn't be in love with either one of them. Wouldn't be pumped. But if you had to play one of them as a low-end running back too, don't expect very many fantasy points, but you could do it. I normally cannot sign off on Trevor Lawrence, but if all these guys play, if everyone is active, again, besides Christian Kirk, he'd be viable as a streaming option in the spot. If you get injuries, though, if like Brian Thomas Jr. doesn't play, don't be streaming Trevor Lawrence. Then for the Eagles, same as always, especially against terrible Jaguars defense. I'm assuming Dallas Goedert's going to be out again. So Hurts, Saquon, Brown, Smith. Start them, bench everyone else. Next up, got a great game. Lions at Packers, 48 point total. Lions, 3.5 point road favorites. For the Lions, this is actually one of the lower totals they'll be in all season. The Packers do have a really strong defense. They're also playing at Lambeau. That's never ideal. This is going to be a really fun game to watch, though, but just limit our touchdown expectation on Detroit. We're getting kind of used to them scoring 1 million points. Last 4 games for them, 42, 47, 31, and 52 points, right? Probably not going to score 50 points against the Packers. Who knows? It's a great offense, but probably not going to do so. We should expect closer to the mid-20s, so fewer touchdowns for the offense. Gibbs, St. Brown, still must starts no matter what. I don't care who they're playing. Play them. Laporta had his most targets of the season last week. We talked about that, right? Being like, okay, does he go back to kind of last year's usage with Jameson Williams now suspended? he kind of did, right? Highest target share on the season, had a good game. Jameson Williams out again. Packers' number one matchup for tight ends. I would definitely be streaming or playing, I guess. I don't think we can call him a streaming option, but I'd be playing Sam Laporta. Beyond those guys, David Montgomery, he scored a touchdown in 19 of 23 games with Detroit, where he hasn't left early due to injury. He had one game where he played like a couple snaps and left early. Take that game out. 19 of 23 games with a touchdown. He is very likely to score. Even factoring that in, he's still just a running back too, but he's probably going to score a touchdown yet again this week. Only other play is Jared Goff. He had 85 passing yards last week and they scored 52 points. Like, that wasn't because of the defense. That was because of just like, you had defensive touchdowns, special team touchdowns. Like, you had long touchdowns rushing. Like, he's going to be fine. Just don't look at that and be like, oh my goodness, what happened there? It was just that they like never had to throw it. I mean, they got up by 1 billion points because of all these other touchdowns. He didn't have to throw the ball. I don't know. That was really wild to see. Stroud last week really struggled. 86 passing yards, complete difference, right? 85 passing yards for Goff last week was because they were dominating the game, didn't have to throw it. 86 passing yards last week for Stroud was, this is a really difficult defense to throw against, and he struggled mightily. So possible Goff struggles here. Probably the worst spot Goff will be in all season. So if you've been like streaming quarterback, he's not one of the ones I'd be looking at. But if you need to play him, it's still a great team. Like Detroit can do it against anyone, but this is not a great spot for Goff. Final 4 o'clock game is going to be Rams at Seahawks. Honestly, another fantastic game. 48.5 point total. Rams 1.5 point road favorites. For the Rams, pretty simple. Start Kyren, Puka, and Kupp when they're healthy. Bench everyone else. I do think you can stream Stafford now. We've been talking about this for a while, being like, he's got these scrub wide receivers. You kind of have to just leave him on free agency, leave him on the bench. But once everyone's healthy, we're going to like Stafford as a streaming option. We saw that play out last week. We weren't certain that Puka was healthy. Turns out maybe he wasn't fully healthy, but he's a monster. Turns out that he was actually going to get a full snap share. They're all healthy now. Play them all. Honestly, you can definitely stream Stafford this week. Then for Seattle, they fell apart last week. Rams have a much weaker defense than the Bills, so I don't think they're going to fall apart this week, but who knows? Big news here is Metcalf. If he plays, play him, and it would make JSN and Lockett pretty low-end flex plays. I think outside my top 40. I think they'd be in my top 42 to 45 range. If Metcalf is out again, these two did pretty mediocre last week, but again, the offense completely fell apart. I don't think they'll do the same against the Rams, so I would go back to playing them if Metcalf is out. Obviously, play Ken Walker either way. And then Geno, great streaming option if Metcalf plays. If Metcalf is out, fine to stream, but I think there are better options. Sunday night game. Colts at Vikings, 46.5 point total. Vikings, 5.5 point home favorites. For the Colts, they benched AR. We went over this in the trade video. That is massive for the Colts wide receivers. They go from a league worst 16 catchable targets per game to a league best 31 catchable targets per game. And since we really only have a few of these guys getting volume, that opens up a massive floor and ceiling for all these guys, especially against the Vikings. The Vikings are facing the highest opponent pass play rate in the entire league since you cannot run on them. I will also note this. They were a defense we were fearing more in the early part of the season. Over the last 2 weeks, the Vikings defense has fallen apart. They allowed the 4th highest EPA per play 2 weeks ago against Detroit and the 2nd highest last week against the Rams. Now, Detroit, Rams, those are obviously two of the better offenses in football, so take it with a grain of salt, but it's noteworthy that a once very elite defense has been bottom 4 in back-to-back weeks now, been absolutely ripped apart. I would consider Jonathan Taylor and Downs must start this week. I'd get him in your starting lineup. Pittman, flex viable. And then Alec Pierce, A.D. Mitchell, desperation plays. I don't think you need to go there, but in a deeper 12-team league with buys and injuries, in 14, 16-team leagues, you could honestly start them. Know that the floor is low, but I think the ceiling is there for both of them. Flacco, definitely viable to stream. Right now, he's not projecting great. I think I'll be able to get that a little bit higher. I do think the streaming options this week are Sam on the other side, Kirk Cousins, Geno if Metcalf plays, Caleb Williams, Matthew Stafford, Bo Nix. I think those are the best options, and I would throw Flacco kind of in there. I think I would definitely prefer Sam, Kirk Cousins, and then Geno if Metcalf plays. I think that's like your top 3, which you're going with. I think Bo Nix is in a good spot for production here. So, and Stafford as well. So I think that's what I prefer over Flacco, and then Caleb and Flacco would be similar. Again, right now, if you watch this right when it goes up, Caleb's projecting way better than Flacco, but I think I'm going to move Caleb down a little bit and then Flacco a little bit higher. But again, I wouldn't be shocked if Flacco throws the ball like 45 times, if he has 350 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's in his range of outcomes. If you have to stream Flacco, you can totally do that. Then for the Vikings, Aaron Jones, Jefferson, must starts. I'd keep rolling with Sam Darnold again. I think he'd be the top streaming option. Addison, that's your big decision point. He's a wide receiver 33 right now. He's been very disappointing this season. I think he's going to go off at some point sometime soon. I do think I'd be fine benching him, though, until he proves he can command a higher target share. And then for Hawkinson, I don't know if he's going to play this week, but in the first week he's activated, I'd bench him. After that, honestly, you're hoping he goes off on your bench and you can use him every week after that. Unless you need to, I would prefer to see him play, see him healthy, see him get a good snap share before trusting him in the starting lineup. Then finally, we've got Bucs at Chiefs on Monday night, 45.5 point total. Chiefs, 8.5 point home favorites. For the Bucs, Auten is a must start, but other than that, nothing is appealing. We've got a 3 running back by committee against the number 1 rush defense in football. No wide receivers also stepping up to help Baker. Baker's been playing out of his mind. He's having a fantastic season, but again, I went over the streaming options. There's a good amount of them this week. I don't think you have to go with Baker. Truly, only Auten is who I trust in the Bucs this week. Then for the Chiefs, it's a great spot. Not only is there a chance that you can get a lot of short fields because you have a great defense going against a very injured offense. That'll create a lot of touchdown opportunities, but also the Bucs defense is just below average in general, so they should be efficient while also having great scoring chances. I'm going back to Mahomes this week over Caleb Williams, like I said before. Kelsey's my tight end 1 right now. Kareem Hunt is a must start. Your only real decision here is Worthy and Hopkins. Hopkins is going to be great. He's going to be in that Rashee Rice role. I just don't know if that role is going to fully be there this week. Preferably, I would probably bench him until we see him in that role. But if you had to go there, there's enough upside. He's had a little bit more time to prepare, a little bit more time to get comfortable with the offense. I think it could happen this week. I would say he's like a low-end flex play. And then I would say kind of the same thing for Worthy, boom bust, right? They're going to take their deep shots with him. He's going to get 7 or 8 looks against a mediocre defense with opportunities to score and probably an end around as well. So he's got upside. Just know that he hasn't been hitting recently. And of course, he could have 3 for 30 just as easily as he could have, 5 for 100 and a score. So flex vibe for both of them, higher upside for Worthy. So that was a really long one. Please leave a like if you watched this far and subscribe if you are new here. Really helps me out more than you think, and it's free to do both. I will keep updating the rankings throughout the week as we get more injury news. There is a decent amount of injury news this week, so please stay up to date with those. And if you have any questions, you can go into the free Discord on my website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. Ask them there, answer other people's questions, post polls as well. Again, there's a link to join that on my website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. That was it for this one, though. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all for the Underdog video on Friday.